Coming up, does Alabama have two quarterbacks better than half of the SEC? And will Auburn's season opener determine the Tigers' entire season? Great to have you with us on SEC Country Live. Bob Fossella sitting in for the great Brandon Adams, who's, I'm told, on assignment. I don't really know what's going on. Of course, joined by the legend himself, Mike Johnson, the former All-American. Great to have you with us. And, man, I always wanted to know, you can answer a question for me. You being the great Crimson Tide guy, me being a Texas X, that being a Longhorn, what would have happened if Colt McCoy didn't get hurt in that game? What would have happened?
There would have been nothing different. I'd still have rings on my finger, and the Alabama dynasty would have still started. You guys might actually still have Mac Brown at the helm if you want to know the truth of that matter. But
they were leading 3-0 when he went out. I just want you to know that.
It might have been worse than that. They were definitely had a head of steam, but that was a heck of a game. That was a heck of a game for sure, and. Well, I'm glad it ended the way it did, for sure.
I guess you did. You're not wearing the ring today. Did you take it off?
Like every now and then. Now, I did bring the ring actually in right before the national championship game when Bama played Georgia. I made sure Brandon Adams got a good look at some of the hardware. So I bring it out from time to time, not very often, but the guys here have seen it every now and then. So I try to keep her locked up and lock and key just when the time's right.
Thank you. Thank you for not having it out today. I didn't want to see that big shiny thing. All right, I think I'm running this show right. If I'm doing anything wrong, you let me know. And, of course, we want to hear from you, so hit us up on the scroll. We'll get to your questions as well. Want to get it started, though. 1st and 10. Number 1, quarterbacks. Always like to be front and center, so that's where we'll start. SEC Network personality Peter Burns listed top 7 quarterbacks in the conference, and basically, Mike, he says that Alabama has 2 quarterbacks better than the rest of the conference. I mean, half of the conference anyway. This is the way Peter Burns listed, and he has Tua Tagovailoa at number 5 and Jalen Hurts as number 6. That's ahead of more than half of the conference.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy about it, Bob, is that when I looked at it, I thought, man, there's just no way. You can look at Jalen Hurts, what his career has been. You can look at Tua, what his career has been. You see the other guys there on that list. I can't argue with Jarrett Stidham. It's hard to argue with the numbers with Drew Lock. I think Jake Fromm's going to be great. I would have maybe moved Nick Fitzgerald up a little bit. But when you talk about these 2 Alabama quarterbacks, I think the biggest thing that pops out to me is how can they have 2 on the same team that are better than 8 other teams in the SEC, the entire roster combined? I don't know who I'd move, though. I mean, you look at it, the teams that you're not seeing featured there, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Florida, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, all these teams are kind of embroiled in quarterback battles. Not that Alabama's not that Georgia's not with Jake Fromm, Justin Fields, but it's hard for me to look at the SEC and think of a name that I would move ahead of Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa. I think he got it right for the most part outside of that list. I would move some things around inside the top 7. But as far as those guys in that top 7, I don't know who you add or who you take away. I think it's a pretty good list.
All right, you say you move some things around. Would Jarrett Stidham be number 1 on your list?
Jarrett Stidham would definitely be number 1 on my list. I think that, when you look at other teams, it's just hard for me. I think that's the hardest pill to swallow about it is you don't see an LSU name up there. You don't see a Florida name up there. There's no Tennessee quarterbacks. There's no Texas A&M quarterbacks. Even though some of these teams have quality guys that are battling out the position, you don't know who their quarterbacks are going to be. So I'm starting my list with Jarrett Stidham. Like I said, I think Nick Fitzgerald actually moves up in mine. Yeah. I think Tua Tagovailoa actually, as hard as, listen, as much crimson glasses as it sounds like for me to say, Tua actually moves up in my list a little bit. I love Jake Bentley. This probably is one of the biggest attacking points that we'll get into. I love Jake Bentley. But show me the big, huge wins. Show me these clutch performances. I know he's a great quarterback. I haven't seen South Carolina's offense be great just yet, though, so I don't know if I'm putting him right there at number 4 where Peter Burns seems to have him.
Let me ask you this. If Jake Bentley is playing in Alabama's offense, is he a whole lot different than, say, A.J. McCarron was?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think that's one of the interesting things to look at. And Peter Burns, I think, does a great job. On his new SiriusXM morning show, he actually talked about this top 7 today. And I think when you look at Jake Bentley and his skill set, I think it transcends programs. I think it transcends offenses. I think Jake Bentley could go to Dan Mullen and win a ton of games. I think Jake Bentley could go to to Georgia and Jim Chaney. I think he could win a ton of games. He kind of transcends. I think he is all bottled into one what a lot of these quarterback competitions are trying to weigh out. I think he's a better passer than Emory Jones, but he's a better runner than Felipe Franks, if you will, down at Florida. So I like where he's got him. I think he would be good other places, but my argument against Jake Bentley at this point is I don't know that their offense really has hit their stride. You saw them do some great things at certain points last year, but I don't know that South Carolina's offense really, I would call them a top 4 offense in the SEC.
I like Peter Burns' list. The one guy that I think is kind of like the X factor that is not on his list who may move up now that he's being coached by Dan Mullen in the Dan Mullen offense is Felipe Franks.
Right.
I think he's got a chance. He's got some talent. I think he's got a chance to be among the better half of quarterbacks in the SEC.
The arm talent's there. It's tough for me to look at what Felipe Franks was last year and
He was
say,
awful.
And say
Except
where
for a
the
Hail
ceiling
Mary
is.
pass, he was awful.
I think that if I'm looking at any fringe quarterbacks, I'm actually going with Jordan Ta'amu from Ole Miss. I mean, his numbers in that offense last year were absolutely incredible. Now with Shea Patterson out of the way, you look at Jordan Ta'amu and go, boy, that wide receiver core is still pretty good. They've had a couple guys exit. I think the wide receiver core is still pretty good. So he's kind of my 8 looking in. Nick Fitzgerald, what does that ankle do coming back from the big surgery, from the big injury in the Egg Bowl? I'm not sure what he's going to be. So Jordan Ta'amu would be the next guy that I really would start to move into that top fringe.
All right, let me ask you this quickly. If you're an NFL scout and you look at the SEC quarterbacks, which guy do you think projects out best at the next level?
Ooh, that's tough to say. When I look at these guys, I actually am probably going to irritate some people. I'm actually going to say Jake Fromm. And
really?
That's not a knock on Jarrett Stidham. I think Jarrett Stidham's a very good quarterback, but I think Jake Fromm mentally has got it right now. I think the way he prepares, and it's tough. I mean, he goes in and really unseats Jacob Beeson, who was handed the job as soon as he rolled up to Georgia. You look at Jake Fromm, and mentally, the middle aspects of the game, playing that position in the NFL, I think he's got those things locked in already. I don't know a ton about Jarrett Stidham's study habits. He's a great quarterback. He has great accuracy. I think he's got a great arm. But when I look at Jake Fromm, he's starting to blend all those things into one. So I think NFL-wise, getting in, watching the film, dissecting the game, I think he's only going to get better in those
Looks
aspects.
like he's a kid that goes through progressions, can go through his reads.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And, that's why when I look at the matchup with him and Justin Fields, people say, oh, Justin Fields, #1 quarterback in the country. I don't know. I think what Jake Fromm did last year is something you almost never see. Now, obviously, Tua comes in the backup role, and we see it again in college football last year with the freshman taking over for the sophomore. But I think when I look at Jake Fromm, I look at a guy who is ready to play, and when he gets on the field, he knows exactly what's about to happen in front of him, and that's what NFL scouts are looking for.
See, I thought you might say Tagovailoa being the next Kenny Stabler. I mean, the left-handed Alabama quarterback that great leader and. Man, he showed some great leadership skills.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I think Tua will get there. I just think the body of the work for Jake Fromm, for me, is just a little bit ahead. I've seen more of Jake Fromm, obviously him being at the helm for Georgia most of last season. I'm not ready to put Tua there just yet in terms of the NFL. The NFL is where I draw the line. College football, I might take Tua. The NFL, I like the preparation for Fromm.
Well, Chad Clark is with you. Says, good call, Mike. I'm not going to argue. Okay, 1st and 10. Item number 2, Sporting News' Bill Bender has early predictions for the 2018 season, and number 1 is the loser of the Auburn-Washington opener. Is this playoff elimination game for Auburn? Does this set the Tigers' entire season?
Yeah, no, I think the angle when I looked at this story is that, listen, these are 18. I think he has 18 on this list of things that he's outlooking for next year. And number 1 on his list is Auburn-Washington being a playoff elimination game. They're in week 1. I'm not sure how that comes to fruition. I look at Alabama and FSU starting off last season. I don't think in any way that was a playoff elimination game. I think FSU could have run the table and made it in, but they're in the ACC. So I understand what its comparison is. If Washington goes into this game against an SEC opponent in Atlanta and gets embarrassed, it's going to be hard to climb out of that. But I look at the alternative. You can't tell me if Auburn loses against a top 5 Washington team in week 1 and somehow finds a way to win out against LSU and against Georgia and against Alabama and win the SEC championship game. I don't think they're eliminated at all. I think what he's trying to say is that he thinks, if Auburn can't beat Washington, then they probably can't beat Georgia and Alabama on those home fields. But it's tough for me to look at it. He had a couple of great points in there, but I have to think that game is just going to be a really good game, and then both those teams could probably rebound afterwards.
Like Bill Bender, good writer. Here's where I disagree in the fact that you just look at last season's Auburn team, the opening weeks of the season. Look at the Clemson game. They barely competed in that game, and they got so much better as the season went along. I'm not saying we're going to see the exact same thing this year because Jarrett Stidham has already been in that offense an entire year, and he's not going to get that much better from the start to the finish. But I do think Auburn could evolve, and with the SEC schedule, could be a lot better team that we see at the end of the year than the beginning.
I agree with you. It's a great comparison too, because you look at a Washington team that could easily win the Pac-12, and that's what Clemson. That's exactly what Clemson did. So it made Auburn look that much better. You know, the one everybody said, you know, it was a one possession, one score, you know, defeat for Auburn last year. Game was never really should have been around 8 points. Their defense really showed up in that game. So. You know, I just, it's hard for me to say anything week one is really that, you know, that concrete, because it's a 14 playoff now. This is not the BCS anymore where you lose one and you might be gone. It's a 14 playoff. Auburn, even with a couple losses, one being to LSU, one being to Clemson, still were in the title picture last year after knocking off Alabama and Georgia. So, you know, Bill Bender, I like the list, and he goes on to actually give a couple other points on his list. Number 5 was Ed Orgeron's seat heating up. You know, number 8 said Mississippi State and Florida will be undefeated when they match up when Dan Mullen makes his way back to Starkville. And number 10, Tua Tagovailoa gets to New York City. That's a few.
Not only gets to New York City, he says he wins the Heisman.
Yeah, he definitely says he wins. He's stepping out a little bit on me right there.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I'd love
from an Alabama guy.
Yeah, I'd love to put the Bama coat on and run with it. I really would. You know, I think the ceiling is going to be there for Tua. I mean, the weapons are incredible that he's going to have at his disposal, but. Boy, New York City running away with the Heisman, a guy who has not even really started a college football game. That's a tough outlook for me.
Let me ask you about number 5 and Ed Orgeron. His seat heating up by week 3 of the season. They've got Miami and then they've got Auburn in week 3. He loses those 2 games. I mean, LSU fans are not known for their patience. I do think his seat will get heated up a little bit, not to the point where he's going to have to worry about losing his job, but I mean. They don't have a whole lot of patience over there in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, they don't. This is an ongoing conversation with Shannon Burgess and a couple of our guys from, you know, our LSU commenters here in the comment section. And me and BA talk about this all the time. And the thing is with this is that Ed Orgeron was handed a team that was a perennial 9-4, you know, 9-3 type team under Les Miles. He was handed a team to get over the hump. Les Miles. Ed Orgeron was not given that job to win 9 games. Ed Orgeron was given that job to get back to the SEC title. So that's why his seat, you know, has been getting heated up. I have a hard time.
He took over a hot seat.
Right.
It's hot every week.
The problem for me, and I think BA usually feels the same way, is that when Ed Orgeron took over the job, this was sold as being an Ed Orgeron CEO and really leaning on the coordinator. So now Matt Canada's gone, Steve Ensminger comes in, and so I have to agree with Bill Bender there. I don't know what LSU really entails. I know they're excited about what they have at the quarterback position. I know they're excited about the offensive lineman they've had come in. But, you know, I think that when you really look at the outlook, they have some tough games ahead of them, including Georgia coming to Baton Rouge, which we'll get into a little bit later. But that schedule is going to be tough for LSU next year.
Well, comment Cliff Nelson, LSU has to beat Miami week 1 if they want to be taken seriously. I don't know if they have to beat them, but we do need to see a lot more from LSU offensively with Ensminger at the start of the season. I mean, they cannot hold back.
I would argue the LSU-Miami game. Now, the rankings aren't going to be as high as you will see for the Auburn-Washington game, but I would argue the LSU-Miami game would actually be more of a de facto. You know, you can't lose that game to me if you're LSU and think you're going to get back in the hunt. Now, they'll have the ability to do it. And like I said, they're going to play Georgia, they're going to play Alabama. But I don't know what Miami's going to be next year, and I think LSU has to hit the ground running. Mark Richt's teams, in my opinion, have struggled in games like this, where you have these openers and you try to do some things. We see Georgia a few years ago lost to, what was it, Boise State, struggled with UNC at times a couple of years ago. So Ed Orgeron, if you want to get that seat starting to cool off, in my opinion, hit the ground running, make sure you kind of put everything out there with Miles Brennan and whoever your running backs are going to be, and make sure that thing gets started on the right foot.
All right, item 3, and this is not a whole LSU show, but how thin is LSU at cornerback? And a lot of folks will say dangerously thin, especially now with Kristen Fulton being hit with that 2-year ban from the NCAA for tampering with a drug test. His 2018 season very much in doubt. LSU has one All-American cornerback in Greedy Williams, but there's serious doubts who his counterpart is going to be. LSU's, how thin are they? Are they seriously thin? In my mind, they are.
Yeah, well, this is something that I actually was not really aware of until the Christian Fulton news came out, and then everybody started talking yesterday because Christian Fulton was suspended last year, and everybody's kind of wondering, what's going on. Obviously, there's something to do with the NCAA. Was it some kind of violation? And then it comes out yesterday that he actually, in fact, tampered with a drug test, which is a pretty big no-no in terms of college football. It's a 730-day suspension, which I guess is 2 years.
2 years.
From the time that it happened. So things don't look good for him. And then you start looking around. You're waiting on, Terrence Alexander, could he come over from Stanford? You're waiting on Kelvin Joseph to arrive this summer. But when you look at it, I think Alex Hickey does a good job. Boy, I don't know what we have really sitting behind those two guys in terms of what's going to be going on there. Do we have that quote right there from Alex Hickey? Yeah, he says, if LSU doesn't land Stanford grad Terrence Alexander, and Fulton remains ineligible, the results will be dire indeed. Jontre Kirkley and Karen Vincent Jr. Would give LSU enough players to play nickel, but if anybody gets hurt, there is basically no depth. Teams might not even bother trying to run against the Tigers' stout defensive front if LSU ends up being that thin at corner. And that's Alex Hickey from our LSU SEC Country site. I think he does a good job of really putting it out there how dire it is because there's not anybody showing up. Patrick Surtain obviously landed at Alabama. It was a big blow to that program. They've got to land Terrence Alexander, in my opinion, if they're going to even be able to field a secondary next year, unless they're going to move any other wide receivers, Manny Netherly obviously being one of those guys that's already. And
I didn't see a whole lot of him. How good is Alexander? Yeah. I just don't know if he's the SEC good.
Yeah, right. And we talked yesterday about two other SEC grad transfers, Madre London, who's a Tennessee running back, and the other guy from Rice headed to South Carolina. And we wonder, how big are those pieces? Are those depth pieces? Guy from Rice, guy from Michigan State didn't really make a huge impact. What are you getting? Turns out this might actually be, Keller Christ aside, any other grad transfer, this might actually be the biggest grad transfer news of the spring. Having this guy come over that can actually play in the secondary. We don't know a ton about his game, obviously being out there at Stanford. But, boy, they need bodies in the worst way right now. I think Ed Orgeron has to be extremely concerned about what's going on.
Well, Esteban Estevez says, LSU is thin at cornerback on paper, but the talent we have at safety that can play corner is there. LSU will be just fine. Yeah. I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, obviously getting Battle back for the next year is going to be a big piece of that. But, they were young last year at the safety position. And looking at next year with the losses of Dante Jackson and Kevin Tolliver, say what you want to about the safeties, and I'm not saying they're not going to be good. I just don't know that they're going to be All-American caliber, and when you have that kind of youth at corner, that makes it that much tougher on those jobs at safety to get things done. I mean, you hear it from Alex Hickey right there. Alex Hickey's a huge LSU fan, and he's telling you dangerously thin. Teams might just air the ball out against LSU if they can't find extra bodies in secondary.
Well, Bradley Bush says versatility is what our DBs are known for, and there's some truth to that, although you got to have the talent to start with, and it's still to be seen. This coaching staff is going to have to do a great job in order to develop this talent and take some DBs, some safeties and play them at the corner, it looks like.
Yeah, no, and I see that happening. I understand what's going to be going on. When you look at who they're going to be matching up with against next year, and they were able to beat Auburn, but Auburn's going to have a great wide receiver core. Alabama's going to have a great wide receiver core. Georgia's going to be good in the passing game. Look at who they're going to be matching up against. Even Texas A&M. Ole Miss. I mean, look at some of these passing teams. This is not the SEC of yesteryear where they're kind of.
Did you say A&M? They're playing defense under Jimbo Fisher.
Listen.
Let me write that down right there.
A&M coming in and attacking that LSU secondary. I would be concerned if I was an LSU fan looking at Jimbo Fisher's passing game, looking at Jordan Tom at Ole Miss. Even a guy like Nick Fitzgerald, if you don't have the bodies in the secondary, can make you look ugly.
I got you. Yeah, A&M's offense. Yeah, A&M's offense could be a factor against that LSU D. All right, back to 1st and 10. Item 4 on his Covered and Smothered podcast, my good friend Barrett Solis says Georgia will be almost impossible to beat. Adds they'll have a fight on their hands when they face Auburn, LSU, and South Carolina. But is there anyone else that's going to put up a fight against this team? And, of course, Georgia does play LSU this year.
Yeah, we got the soundbite from Barrett Solis loaded up, so here he is right here.
They do get Auburn at home, which is huge. And the crossover game with LSU I don't think is that huge of a deal either. So when it comes to Georgia, give them room for one loss, and then I think everybody else might beat each other up. So it's going to be a runaway for the Georgia Bulldogs, I believe. Now, does that make it an easy runaway? No. They're going to have to fight against Auburn. They're going to have to fight against LSU a little bit. I think they're going to have to fight their tails off against South Carolina. And certainly the Florida and Tennessee games are rivalry games, and you don't want to count those out. But that team, the way it's built, with the attitude that Justin Fields and this whole new recruiting class will bring, in addition to what already exists, in addition to the foundation that was laid over the first 2 seasons, they're going to be almost impossible to beat.
And Shannon Burgess in the comment section, mess around and make me almost lose my religion over here. That's how people are feeling about Rouge about that comment. And it made me scratch my head too. It really did.
I think I was excited about Georgia. I don't have a bias for any team in the SEC. Didn't go to an SEC school. Got to give Georgia all the credit in the world for the season they had in 2017. But are we getting a little carried away with this team?
Right.
You've lost some good players, especially defensively. Lost two great running backs. Are we putting the cart in front of the horse a little bit on this team?
You guys hearing this out there in the comment section? I don't think BA has never said anything along those lines. If he heard you right now, he might pass out.
He's probably coming in here right now. He's ready to tackle me.
You know, he's on location or whatever we call it in the biz, and I'm telling you right now, he'd pass out if he heard you make that statement. But I agree with you. I think that, listen, I think Georgia's going to be an extremely good team. Don't get me wrong. We thought that going into last year. I mean, I named Georgia as my SEC East winner. I projected it. Ended up coming to fruition. Alabama and Georgia meet in the national title game. But have they shown the track record? Because as an Alabama guy, I look at it and say, boy, LSU under Les Miles looked like they were starting a dynasty. Notre Dame, Brian Kelly looked like they were starting a dynasty. I really thought that Gene Chizik at Auburn was starting a dynasty. Well, with some of the things they did back in 2010. So is the 2-year footprint going to be there for Kirby Smart? Is this something you can just say, boy, they're going to be nearly impossible to beat? And I think everybody sees that lower third and is starting to comment in the comment section about, is LSU going to be an easy win? Answer is no. That game is never easy to win. Ask Auburn last year. Ask some of the other teams. I mean, ask Alabama, even though they pulled it off the last couple times. It's not easy to go down to Baton Rouge, but Barrett Slee says right there, I don't think that LSU game is that big of a deal. I think they're going to fight their tails off against South Carolina, but LSU, he kind of gives you the palms up. So, boy, that's scary. To me, if you're looking at Georgia and you're a Georgia fan, I'm trying to temper expectations. Yeah, listen, he pretty much said right there he thinks they're going to go undefeated all the way into the playoffs. And I think that's a scary thing for Georgia fans. I think they're ready for it. But, if you're talking about walking into LSU and Baton Rouge and walking out with a win easily, I don't see it.
LSU aside, though, you got a much improved, or so you figure, a much improved Florida team this year under Dan Mullen. South Carolina won 9 games last year, picked up some momentum along the way. Jake Bentley got better as the season went along. This is the SEC, my friends. There's not any easy wins on any given Saturday. Yeah,
and Philo Beto says in the comment section on YouTube, he said Death Valley is actually worth 7 points. And I tend to agree with that. Sometimes the teams that go in and should win by a couple touchdowns, it's a narrow victory. And we've seen time and time again that teams that go in there and, listen, people are going to say whatever they want to about LSU against Troy last year. I understand it. I think every SEC team goes through that kind of thing at one point or another, but it's still a tough place to play. And if you're having a Georgia team that's probably going to be top 3 in the country coming in there on a Saturday night in Baton Rouge, it's not going to be easy. But to your point, I have to agree with you. I think Florida's going to be, in much better shape this year. I think their strength and conditioning program's gotten a lot better down there under Nick Savage. I think that Dan Mullen's going to be able to score points. That's going to be a neutral site game, so I don't know if Florida's ready for that test just yet. But everywhere around Georgia, in my opinion, teams are getting better. I think Florida's getting better. I think Tennessee will probably have more fight in them. I don't know that they have the soldiers to go out there and get it done against Georgia this year, but I think you see more fight out of Tennessee. And South Carolina is one of those teams that can go either way. I'm not as high on South Carolina as some other people, but Jake Bentley on the field is the X factor that could probably get it done in a lot of different ways. So to say that Georgia just running through things, to me, I think he's stepping a little bit out over his toes.
Well, I'll tell you what, you go to Baton Rouge, and like you said, that's probably going to be a Saturday night game.
Yeah.
Night game in Baton Rouge is worth 7 points, and who knows where LSU is at that point in the season, having already played Auburn, having already played Miami. LSU could be a tested team at that point, and, man, all bets are off.
Yeah, all bets are off for sure. And listen, I don't know what LSU is going to be next year. We've talked about it, me and NBA, a ton. And we just talked about the secondary, though. But I have to believe that atmosphere is going to be tough for a guy like Jake Fromm that obviously played in some tough atmospheres last year, but I don't know if anything in the SEC compares. I've been there before. I've been in that uniform. I tried to hear my quarterback talking over that crowd, at Saturday night in Death Valley when the sun's going down and the tiger eye in the middle and you're backed up the student section. So, my hat's off to them. And obviously I know what angle Barrett Slee's trying to take there, but come on, man. I don't think anything's to be taken for granted.
Miles Brennan, he'll have a few games under his belt. I assume he's going to emerge as the guy.
Yeah.
Talented kid?
Talented kid for sure. Ed Orgeron seems to love him. I don't know that he's going to have the protection this year. I think that they're pretty high on some of the young guys they had last year on that offensive line, but they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit this year if Miles Brennan's going to continue to be the guy.
All right, yeah, they don't have guys. They got to find a running back. All right, let's go to item 5. This was released by the University of Tennessee. It is is it a coaching staff hype video? Is this aimed at Tennessee recruits? Is this cool? Is it ridiculous? You take a look, and we'll talk about it on the back end.
I think when you walked in the door from day one, we knew what to expect.
Got a lot of national championships on the staff.
The staff's like a family.
We've all worked together in some form or fashion. They understand what it takes. They understand the grind.
You know, great recruiters, great teachers.
There's a lot of knowledge on this staff. There's been a lot of success throughout the years with this staff, and the knowledge speaks for itself.
There's one word that I can sum this
I love it.
staff
I think it's a great, I don't know who it's aimed at. I think it's a great video. You know, Tracy Rocker, Chris Winkie, Chris Rump. Got a good coaching staff.
Yeah, they definitely have a good coaching staff. And listen, me and BA love talking about hype videos. We've talked about hype videos for recruiting. We've talked about hype videos getting ready for the first game. There's been spring football hype videos. There's hype videos for everything. They do a good job. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure I like this. I really.
What don't you like?
Listen, they're listing off staff accomplishments. You know, Chris Winkie wins a Heisman Trophy. Let's listen. You know, we got one Heisman Trophy winner. We have a first-round draft pick. We've got a. And it's like, I'm not sure if that translates into a good coaching staff or not. I mean, do you really trust? Chris Winkie's a running backs coach. I mean, are you telling me that you're sending this out to recruits if you're Tennessee? And I know what Jeremy Pruitt's angle is. I know that Jeremy Pruitt's hitting the ground running recruiting. He has thrown out a ton of offers. They've already got a bunch of big names on campus, so that's pointing in the right direction. But this one kind of falls flat for me. I don't know that the coaching. I've never seen it. I've never seen a coaching staff hype video. It falls flat for me. I'm not sure that the. You talked about it. I don't know who the intended audience is, but it's not me.
What else,
sure.
if you're Tennessee, realistically, what else can you hype at this point in time? You're not going to hype the team on the field.
That's a good point, and you know, I think you have to start building from the ground up. That's what Jeremy Pruitt's trying to do, and you know, I'm not in here trying to knock on Tennessee's program and their coaching staff. I know Jeremy Pruitt. I love Jeremy Pruitt. But I'm not sure what's intended here and who he's really trying to go after and who they're sending this to. I know that Twitter and social media is a big deal. You've seen Alabama's coaching staff come out gunning on Twitter. I mean, there's been graphic after graphic after graphic coming from those guys. So it's a big deal to put out this kind of information. But you're naming accolades for your coaches as players. I'm not sure really what they're actually getting at. Listen, I think it's cool to say, man, Chris Winkie won a Heisman Trophy as a quarterback at Florida State. He was like 28 years old when he did it. Does that make me, as a running back, want to go play for Chris Winkie at Tennessee? Maybe you get a guy to say yes, it does. You know, maybe somebody's looking at it that angle. But staff accomplishments to me don't really signify what I'm going to get on a coaching staff on the field if I'm an 18-year-old stepping into the program.
But you know what? I'll tell you this. This is a step in the right direction. I'll come clean here. My son is going to be a freshman at Tennessee next year. And so we went up to Knoxville a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And all the tour guides could talk about was just ragging on Butch Jones and that entire team last year. Hey, that's our end zone. We don't get to see that often here. So it's just a step in the positive, a step in the right direction for this program, which has seen nothing but the bottom in 2017. Yeah. I think it's a good move. A couple of months from now, a diehard football player like yourself will have forgotten all about that.
Yeah, and listen, those tour guides must have been watching SEC Country Live because I was calling for Butch's job a year ago. And,
I think they mentioned you.
Yeah, they might have mentioned me by name, but hey, I'll give you credit for that. I think that when you look at, I tend to look at trends. I think that Florida's trending the right direction. As long as you can go with positive news continuing to come out, you start landing some of the right recruits, you start getting guys on campus, you start getting grad transfers, which Tennessee's been able to do, Keller Christ and Madre London here in the last week. I'm with you. So there is a trend in the right direction. This isn't going to knock on that trend for me, but I'm not sure what it is. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around it.
Well, you would never see Nick Saban doing something like this or allowing his coaching staff to do something like that.
I mean, listen, Nick Saban, they put out things all the time, but it's about their team they've had.
Right.
It's about the players they put
yeah.
out. And listen, there's been some controversy about this too. We had Jimbo Fisher who put out a graphic about some of his DBs they had at Florida State. Listen, Jimbo Fisher's coached this many DBs.
Tim Brewster did the same thing with the Aggies, putting out all this
stuff. They were
stuff.
not happy about it. Yeah. It's like, hey, listen, I didn't go to Texas A&M. Don't put my name out there. So I guess if you're going to do one of the two, and Jeremy Pruitt has put out a little bit of the same thing with some of his players from Florida State and Alabama, but I guess if you're going to choose between one of the two, you put out the coaching hype video. It kind of falls on deaf ears for me. Is all I'm saying.
I hear you, but you got to build the culture. You got to start building that, moving this team in the right mindset, and I think it's a good step. I like it.
Listen, Cliff Nelson's in the comment section. He says, "I think Pruitt turns around Tennessee before Mullen does at Florida," and that's a little bit of a hot take for me. That's a little bit of a hot take for me, Cliff, and I understand. I like Cliff's opinions because Cliff always rides that line. I don't know that Jeremy Pruitt's got the weapons that Dan Mullen does at Florida right now. I think it's more accessible right now for Dan Mullen to go out and recruit the state of Florida. I don't know that the talent lies within the state of Tennessee. I think Jeremy Pruitt has to come outside the state of Tennessee. And I think Dan Mullen being an offensive guy, being an offensive guru, an offensive coordinator, his background makes it easier for him to transition. I think he puts up points sooner than Jeremy Pruitt probably does at Tennessee. And until Jeremy Pruitt can get the bodies to run his defense in that 3-4 style and really be stout up front with some of the two-gap linemen, I don't know when we're going to see Jeremy turn it around. I think he's the guy, but for me, Jeremy's more of a 3-year window, and I look for Dan Mullen to start doing some decent things about halfway through the year this year.
I think the answer to that question, at least in my mind, is which one of these coaches comes up with a A1 quarterback, and whoever gets it first, they're going to be the ones that get out ahead.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know that Jeremy Pruitt wants to run the pro-style offense, and I think that that's going to be best for Tennessee in the end. I think that Keller Christ, if you have to run with him, that's best for Tennessee in the end. I just think that makes the transition tougher. I think when you're running a pro-style and you don't have the bodies on defense to really kind of lean back on that, if you're not scoring a ton of points with a pro-style offense, because really Tennessee doesn't have much of an offensive line right now, it makes it tough to transition. I think it's going to be another 2 years before we see Jeremy Pruitt really start to kick things into gear.
I think Tennessee fans are hoping Tennessee is where Georgia was 2 years ago, but as you said, they just don't have the Jimmies and Joes.
Georgia's got the home state. Kirby Smart says we're going to put up a fence around it. Now, I'm not knocking on what Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, every now and then, there's 10 prospects nationally that you look at.
It doesn't have the D1 talent.
It's not the greater Atlanta area. It's not South Georgia. It's not some of the other players that you've seen Kirby Smart really be able to lock down. Not only that, but Cade Mays is headed down from Knoxville to head to Athens this spring. So it's a tough knock on them.
All right, 1st and 10. Item number 6. CBS Sports' Barton Simmons, another good friend, lists the Auburn running battle position as the #1 position battle in the SEC, #1 in the country. And he doesn't even mention any SEC QB battles, which I think are going to take precedent. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Barton Simmons, it's an interesting list because he comes out and he says that there's 10 position battles within the spring. I think Clemson's quarterbacks were #1. I think Ohio State's quarterbacks were #2. And that's all the quarterback battles you saw on the entire list. Auburn's running backs come in at #3. I don't agree with anything this guy's saying. I don't think Clemson's quarterback battle is that great. Ohio State, to me, they'll probably be good either way with whoever they stick in the quarterback. To me, you're going to see a handful of running backs for Auburn. Is it really that big of a position battle if you're thinking they go 3 deep when they hit the field next year? I mean, Devin Barrett, Jartavius Whitlow, Asa Martin, a lot of these guys are going to be on that field next year. These quarterback battles, though, when you look at places like Texas A&M, when you look at Florida, when you look at Tennessee,
when you look at Alabama,
when you look at Alabama, when you look at those quarterbacks are taken front and center. So when you look at Auburn possibly coming in as and here's how, and I brought this up to a friend of mine too, because I was wondering, is Auburn running back, is it that legendary a position? Maybe it's the position clout that comes with being the Auburn running back. Kerryon Johnson, we can go back, Trey Mason, Ontario McCaleb, you name them. They've all been great running backs. I just don't know that position is really that big a deal for one single guy to come away with it to where we put it as a #3 position battle in college football this spring.
Well, I think the #1 position battle in all of college football, let alone the SEC, is the quarterback battle at Alabama. Everyone seems to be giving the job to Tua, but I don't think anyone on that coaching staff is at this point in time.
Yeah, no, I don't think Nick Saban's doing that at all. I wonder if you won't see a rotation from them next year, and this is obviously an ongoing conversation that we're going to continue to have all the way until fall camp, because Nick Saban's not going to name a starter anytime soon. He's not going to get done with spring and say, well, Tua's the guy, and then Jalen packs his bags and heads off campus. I don't see it going on. I tend to agree with you. I don't want to put the Bama glasses on and look at it. I think that Bama being, possibly a preseason #1 and not having a set-in-stone starter at quarterback, to me, should put all the focus on them. But you do see that with Ohio State. Obviously Ohio State's got a couple of guys that haven't been on the field, so you understand how that kicks them into gear. They're going to be a top 5 team. Clemson's the same way, going to be a top 5 team. They have an incumbent starter, by the way, just like Alabama, but you saw his ceiling kind of come out in the Sugar Bowl loss to Alabama. So it's not that I don't think Auburn's running back's a big deal, but when I look at Cam Martin, when I look at Asa Martin, when I look at some of these other guys that are going to be going through some of these drills, they're 6 deep, and I have every reason to believe that Gus Malzahn will use at least 4 of them next year. And so, is it a position battle? Yeah, it's a battle for carries, but listen, there could be 3 of those guys get 10 carries a game next year.
All right, who's going to be the guy that leads Auburn in rushing? Is it going to be Cam Martin?
I've gone through most of this offseason saying it's Jartavius Whitlow. I like what Gus Malzahn has to say. His blocking ability caused him a 3rd down back. He was a high school quarterback, so he's kind of getting in the rep things. But from what I hear recently, after spring has started, because these running backs have been full contact down in Auburn, it seems to be Devin Barrett that's getting a lot of the carries that I thought Jartavius Whitlow was. So obviously you're going to have Cam Martin. I think Asa Martin is going to be kind of in that build as well. But Devin Barrett might be the sneaky one that I think starts to get a lot of those carries as well.
Does anyone run for 1,000 yards?
I think there's always going to be that guy at Auburn. It's hard for me. Auburn's offensive line is going to struggle next year. There's no doubt about that in my mind. J.B. Grimes has been brought in to kind of make over what that offensive line is because they're losing a ton of bodies. So if the offensive line can get right with Jared Stidham at the helm, I think that most of these teams are going to have to defend against the pass. That'll probably make the offensive line look a little bit better in the running game. One of those backs.
Well, what's the difference from Herb Hand to J.B. Grimes?
Well, yeah, I think Herb Hand really had that recruiting element. I mean, we talked yesterday on the show with Matt Stewart about Calvin Anderson headed to Texas.
Because of his ties with Herb Hand.
And so, I think when you look at it, J.B. Grimes is known as that on-the-field guy. And I think that meshes well right now because Auburn needs the on-the-field guy right now. Listen, ton of new starters coming by. He's got to, we talked about it yesterday. He's got to make Calvin Ashley more mentally tough. I think that as those things start to go on, you'll see that for this year, for this football season, J.B. Grimes is the right guy. Now, in the future, 3 years from now, I don't know if J.B. Grimes is the guy for Auburn. I think they need a recruiter in that spot at some point. But I think for this year, bringing that line along, I think he's plugged into the right spot.
All right, 1st and 10, item number 7. Spring break at Georgia. Jake Fromm is spending his spring break working with a quarterback coach. Is this because he's feeling the heat from the true freshman, Justin Fields, or is it because this is Jake Fromm just being Jake Fromm?
Yeah, I think it's Jake Fromm being Jake Fromm. I think it is. We talked about how he showed up last year ready to go to battle with Jacob Eason. And this is, we talk all the time. We get on these shows, and I'm sure you've done the same thing, and you hear pundits all across, competition really breeds better players. You got to go out there and have that competition. I think that Jake Fromm is a perfect example of that. You can't really point to that all the time, but I think Jake Fromm coming into college knew he was going to have this work ethic. And I think he knows this year to keep Justin Fields off the field, he has to have this work ethic again. I think one of the downsides of what Jacob Eason went through at Georgia was no competition when he got there. He was able to be Jacob Eason. He was handed the reins. He kind of gets out on the field. Doesn't have to worry about Jake Fromm from the get-go. And he was going to be handed the reins again last year until he got injured. So I think this is Jake Fromm being Jake Fromm. Obviously, the talk and chatter out there about Justin Fields is probably getting to him at some point. But I think he would have been doing this with his spring break either way, no doubt in my mind.
All right, if you have a good handle on Kirby Smart to a certain extent, what is he looking at a Justin Fields? I mean, where is he going to be at the end of the day? Is he going to be a guy that's just in mop-up duty? Is he going to put him in they're playing one of their preseason games that they're going to blow out whomever. Is he in on the 3rd series and playing the 3rd to the 5th series? Where does he fit in as a true freshman?
It's tough. You almost wonder if Kirby Smart's not on the phone with Nick Saban going, boy, how'd you handle this last year? Because this is not going to be easy.
Tagovailoa played a lot in the early season. He played 6 or 7 games.
And listen, I was at the Alabama-Tennessee game where Tagovailoa was in the game with the 2-minute drill at the end of the first half against Tennessee. Now, obviously, that game ended up being a blowout, and I think Bama won like 49-3 or something like that, or 49-7. But when you look at those specific instances, I wonder if Justin Fields gets a lot of that same thing this year. I think Jake Fromm, and I mentioned this earlier, Jake Fromm, to me, mentally, is so far ahead of where most quarterbacks are his age. He knows his reads. He knows where to throw the football. Not only that, he knows where to throw it to keep it out of danger. And so I think when you put all those things together, I think Justin Fields, obviously, what was this guy's ranking on 247? Like 99.9 or whatever. Listen, it's through the roof, but you have to have that mental aspect. You have to realize this guy, just like your son, this guy's getting ready to move away from home. This guy's going to have so many things going on with his freshman classes at Georgia. I think it was really impressive the way Jake Fromm handled that. I'm going to have to see with my own eyes that Justin Fields is able to do that again back-to-back years at Georgia and see how he handles all that before I start talking about his playing time. I'm not sure. I'm a big fan of Jake Fromm. I think Justin Fields makes a push, but I'm going to have to see him mentally and physically start to accept that job at Georgia.
I think you make a good point, though. Kirby does look at what Nick Saban did with Tagovailoa as a freshman, and he worked him into a lot of games. He got a lot of playing time, and so when it came to it in the national championship game, this kid was ready to play.
Yeah, no, he definitely was. And everybody, I guess when Jacob Eason came back and obviously following it with Brandon Adams, it's like, Jacob Eason's coming back. What are they going to do now? And I think it was the preparation that made that kind of an easy call for Kirby. He's like, listen, I understand what Jacob Eason is, all the talent in the world, love the kid to death, but Jake Fromm right now is playing at a high level because he's prepared. And I think that, listen, I think the best thing that can happen to Justin Fields is that really rubs off on him. I think, being able to look at a guy like Jake Fromm really in that situation it's going to transcend that quarterback room. It's going to really move Justin Fields to the next level, and whoever else comes in underneath him. Would I be guessing if I told you how I thought it was going to play out this year? Absolutely. I think everybody's doing that at this point. It's like I said, I got to see Justin Fields take on college the way that Jake Fromm did before I believe Justin Fields is going to slide in there and start taking his reps. I think Jake Fromm is that much better right now. Justin Fields' ceiling is through the roof, but right now being able to adapt to college football, to me, that's the check mark in the right direction.
See, I'm going to take you back to 2009. If Mac Brown would have used Sterling Gilbert that way, he would have been prepared to face Alabama instead.
Listen, he was ready. He wasn't ready. Over a couple hundred yards on us out there.
Oh, the end of the first half, man. You even picked off a
Marcel
little shovel
pass. Picking off a little shovel pass. Boy, those are good times. Take me back. Take me back. Those are good times. That was 40 pounds ago for me, but take me back.
All right, 1st and 10. Let's move on. Number 8, the first SEC spring game is at the end of the month, and according to the Sporting News' Bill Bender, the SEC has 4 games making the top 10 list of spring games, and here they are. Number 1, big surprise, Alabama. He's got the Aggies, number 7. Of course, we're all going to be looking to see what Jimbo Fisher has in store. Georgia at 9, Florida Gators with Dan Mullen, his first spring game down in the Swamp at number 10.
Can I give you a little bit of a hot take, though, looking at this list? To me, the Alabama and Georgia games, the quarterback thing is what drives this to why he puts them at 1 at 9, because you want to see where Tua is at. You want to see where Justin Fields is at.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm more excited to see Florida than I am any of the other 3. I want to see Dan Mullen back in the Swamp. I want to see what he's going to do offensively. I want to see what Felipe Franks is going to be able to do with his legs. I want to see where Emory Jones is at. I want to see where the rest of the quarterback room is. I want to see how good a shape this offensive and defensive line is under Nick Savage. I want to see what's going on with his defense. To me, the Florida football game is the biggest one. I think Texas A&M comes in a close second because Jimbo Fisher splashing on campus, all that. But I want to see Florida back, because when Florida is great, Florida's fan base is great. And I think that they show up to this game and they start to breathe that new life back into that program they haven't had since Urban Meyer has been there.
I agree with you on Texas A&M. What is Jimbo Fisher going to do? He's completely changing Kevin Sumlin's offense. Plus, he's got 2 quarterbacks to choose from between Starkel and Mon, and a new defensive coordinator that he stole from Notre Dame for about $2 million. I think it's going to be really interesting, that spring game at A&M.
Yeah, they've got their own quarterback battle too. I mean, Nick Starkel and Kellen Mond, and obviously, listen, you guys know in the comment section, I've joked on Nick Starkel a few times over the last couple of weeks. He puts out the Justin Bieber hype video. I don't know if you even saw that. That was absolutely awful. But I think when you
makes the Tennessee coaching video look good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Such a good point. That makes the Tennessee coaching video. I actually give it 2 thumbs up after thinking about Nick Starkel's video. But I think when you look at listen, all 4 of those games, there's some type of quarterback battle going on. I really, in my opinion, I don't think there's that big a battle, with Jake Fromm and Justin Fields, but it's going to be hyped up that way. I think you're going to see Tua and Jalen slugging it out, but I'm not so sure that either one of those guys are going to be eliminated by the end of spring. So I want to see Nick Starkel and Kellen Mond. I want to see Felipe Franks and Emory Jones, or whoever else Dan Mullen decides to trot out there, and I want to see the new looks of these teams. I don't listen. Kirby Smart's been at Georgia, and Nick Saban's been at Alabama for 10 years. I don't know. I know about what those teams are going to look like. Right. I want to see what the teams are going to look like at Texas A&M and Florida, because I want to start making those projections for the rest of the season and saying, boy, Martez Ivey looks like he's in shape to go. Some of these other players, C.C. Jefferson looks like he's adjusting well to the new staff. So those are the big games for me.
Well, Bill Bender, by the way, his top 5 in spring games, number 1, Alabama, 2, Nebraska. And I think Nebraska might be number 1 to see what Scott Frost is going to do there, taking over a team that won either 4 or 5 games last year. A lot of people think we're looking at an 8 or 9 win game, 9-win season for Nebraska.
I like that too. I mean, I think I would actually slide Nebraska up ahead of Alabama too. And listen, you guys know I bleed crimson, but when I look at Nebraska, it's the same thing. It's a new breed. Nebraska fans, when they're great,
new coach,
they're incredible. So getting a new coach, a new blood in there, and having this transition. What's the offense going to look like? What's the defense going to look like? What's the team going to look like? What kind of energy are they going to have? That's the biggest question. I mean, I don't want to call Alabama and Georgia spring games a snooze fest, because they're not going to be. They are going to be intriguing. I'm going to be glued to watching both of them. But if I'm ranking them, I'm putting some of these new coaching hires way ahead of some of the guys that have been around, because I know about what Alabama's going to be strong defensively. They're going to have a good offensive line. Running back's going to be good. Same thing at Georgia. We kind of know what we're getting in a lot of those situations.
Absolutely. All right, 1st and 10, number 9. South Carolina offensive lineman Zack Bailey. He put his name in the ringer for the NFL draft, but the NFL basically told him, "Hey kid, go back to school. You're not ready." And so he has gone back to school. I think we got the quote from Bailey telling John Del Bianca from 247 Sports, they just told me to go back to school, which is okay. My degree means more to me than anything. This December I'll get my degree, and right after that I'll start playing ball again. Bailey said, I wasn't really anticipating on leaving, and it was an easy decision for me, maybe a harder decision, and you tell me, Mike, because you've been through this. He's going to move from right tackle to left guard.
Yeah.
How difficult a transition?
I think it's a good move for him. It was a good move for me. You know, when I was playing right tackle, I was about 290, 295 my sophomore year. And I met with Coach Saban, I met with our offensive line coach, and I realized that we had other guys that could possibly play the tackle position. And not that I wasn't a decent tackle. I had my ups and the downs, but I was better suited. And listen, they didn't have to talk me into it too hard. I actually switched over to left guard and played between two All-Americans in 2008. I had Andre Smith and Antoine Caldwell. I was sandwiched right there between them. So we had a pretty good left side of the offensive line. But I think this is the right move for Zack Bailey. I think when you look at South Carolina's offensive line, he's going through some of the same things. It's not that Zack Bailey's not a good right tackle. It's that he's better suited for guard and he's more of a weapon playing guard. Laterally, for me, Zack Bailey, and we touched on Zack Bailey a ton last year. He was making the transition last year, I think, from guard maybe back to tackle or flipped. I can't remember what the position he had going on last year. But when you break down his film, I think he's very good anchoring at the point of attack, and that's one of the reasons he made a good tackle at points last year. But his lateral quickness, his ability to kind of kick, set, and get back with his feet came under attack at times last year. And so I think him kind of transitioning into guard where it's a little bit more of a phone booth, a little bit more of a bubble. You kind of stick right there and you can anchor down in place. You got help on both sides. You got kind of some bumpers. I think it's the right move for Zack Bailey, and I love him, coming out and saying, listen, it wasn't that hard of a decision, because you have to check your ego. If you're going to put something in the NFL, boy, what's my grade? And they say, you need to go back to school, kind of check your ego at the door. But I think he is a huge piece to what South Carolina could possibly be next year. When you hear Barrett Sallee say it, South Carolina, Georgia's going to have to fight against him. Zack Bailey is one of the big reasons. He's one of the big guys for them. I think he has a big future.
Tell me, after your junior year, did you even entertain any thoughts, or that was just not even on the table?
You know what's funny? It's a good story about this. So after my junior year, we went like 7-6 when I was a sophomore. So my junior year, we go like 12-0 in 2008. We lose the Florida Nest title game, and I'm getting ready for a bowl practice, and a bunch of these writers get up around me, and I guess somebody had just announced they were going pro. I can't remember who it was at the time. Somebody had just announced they were going pro. It might have been Andre Smith or somebody like that. And they come up to me and they're like, Mike, hey, what's your decision on the NFL draft? And I'm sitting there like a deer in headlights. I'm going, what are you talking about? Like, nobody wants to be in the NFL. Like, listen, I'm playing between two All-American linemen. Nobody wants to be in the NFL right now. And that was the first time it even popped in my head about going to the NFL. It really was. And so it wasn't an ego check for me. I was just like, hey, listen, this is my personality. I don't know what you guys are talking about. I was like, I'm definitely going to be back next year. What are you talking about? It's 2009. Listen, we're going to try to make a run at this thing. I'm definitely going to be back. But that was the first time the NFL had ever popped into my head. So it was kind of a shocking thing. I didn't go the route that Zack Bailey did. I think a lot of people put in for their grades nowadays. It wasn't that big of a deal back then to put in for a grade. But it was to have somebody even ask me that, to have a reporter or a writer ask me that, I was like, what?
You got the right guy?
I'm going to the NFL? No. You got this all twisted up. It was funny stuff.
And you're glad you stuck around for another season. NFL did come, but man, it was a heck of a 2009 season. All right, you ready for 1st and 10? We're at number 10.
Topic number 10. Boy, we knocked them down.
I think we're right on time. Are we good on time, Hannah? Are we good? Michael, are we good?
Yeah, we're right on time. Right on time.
I'll check with Brandon. USA Today voted Auburn's rolling of Toomers trees as the best tradition in all of sports.
This is shocking to me.
It's very shocking to me, but then again, I'm thinking about this and I'm like, wow, what's better?
Yeah. No, and listen, this is. I think this is a vote.
It's not even any trees there anymore.
I think this was a vote on USA Today, and this is like you just said. This is not in college football. This is not even in SEC. This is in all of sports. You're talking about Auburn. Congratulations on your championship. You have been voted #1 tradition in all of sports, rolling Toomers Corners. And listen, I know this is a ginger topic. If an Alabama guy talking to Auburn people, I still would like to apologize for the guy that poisoned the tree a few years ago. That's not how I feel. I would have never done anything like that. But listen, the Alabama guy in me wants to hate on this. I just can't, though. I think it's a great tradition. Alabama loves to talk about tradition, but I don't think Alabama's got anything like this. You got the eagle flying in the stadium, and you got the rolling of Toomers Oaks right there on the corner after the game. I think it's a great tradition. You know, I think the other things on the list were Texas A&M Yell Crew. I don't know if you saw the list or not. But
yeah, I got the list right here. Number 2 is March On, Army Black Knights, Navy Midship, and that's cool.
That's pretty good.
I'd love to go there. I don't know, have you been to the Army Navy game?
No, it is on the bucket list, though. I got to get there at some point.
Yeah,
It's too cold for me last year. A little bit too cold for me.
Aggies Midnight Yell at number 3. I'm a Longhorn, man. They're Aggies. Enough said. The Grove, gotta love the Grove.
Yeah.
That's a great tradition.
But is that a tradition, though? Like, I feel like the Grove, like, everybody kind of tailgates. I don't know. I've never been, though, so I can't talk about it. I've never been to the Grove. I need to probably make my presence felt this year.
Number 5, Raider Nation, Oakland Raiders. Number 6, Sooner Schooner. Just bringing out that damn little.
I'm not a huge Oklahoma guy. Probably you aren't either.
7, Script, Ohio. That's pretty cool. They get different celebrities to dot the I. Right?
I think that's pretty cool. 7, that probably moves up for me.
Number 8, Jump Around, Wisconsin Badgers. I don't know.
Yeah, when they just play the song and they get rowdy, I think I can see that. You know what's not on the list though is the Hawkeye wave they did this year that was highlighted on game day. Did you guys see that where they start waving to the hospital next door?
Well, I came up with my own list here. See if you like these. Okay. 7th inning stretch at Fenway Park where they play Sweet Caroline.
Yeah,
that's pretty
cool.
Well,
listen, I'm a Cubs fan. Harry Carey singing the
Harry Carey back in the
stretch
day
in Chicago. Boy, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
I can think of 1,000 Masters traditions from the green jacket to the honorary starters.
Tomato cheese.
You know, well, God, those are the worst sandwiches ever. I used to love in the day the Miami Hurricanes coming out on the field. They're playing the theme to whatever, and the smoke's coming out before the start of the Notre Dame game. They're playing the Irish fight song, and they're in front of Touchdown Jesus.
Touchdown Jesus.
Running Ralphie out, Colorado with the Buffaloes.
That's pretty good. We played Colorado in a bowl game one year. They did that. It was pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie.
No, there's some good stuff. Yeah, I don't know about the rolling of the trees number 1, especially since the trees really aren't there anymore.
I'd like to know the scientific measures that USA Today took. But like I said, I'm not going to be that Alabama guy that hates on the Auburn thing. Good for you guys because I think it is an excellent tradition. Put it at number 1 though. I think there is something to be said. I love what you said about Boston and the Sweet Caroline. I think that's a pretty good one. I think that's one of the best.
Christopher Dillon says the list is bogus, but I don't see anyone actually looking over here. Is anyone coming up with anything better? I'm not seeing
Shannon
anything.
Burgess says in the YouTube comment section, the Grove ? Please.
Teresa Stewart, we do orange and white blocks. Neyland Stadium rocks too. Just the playing of Rocky Top is pretty cool.
Calling Baton Rouge and LSU.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh man, you guys, I'm not an LSU guy, but I gotta tell you, that has my heart. Anytime that you went into LSU and they played Colin Baton Rouge, boy, those are good times right there. So, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna do a champion for life.
Champion of life. Well, listen.
The
NBA have been doing this show for a little over a year now, and every time we do the show, we come up with a video at the end just to kind of smooth transition into the next day's show. And we come up with a video, and we named it after Butch Jones. We call it the Champion of Life, and every day we try to come up with a Champion of Life. And today's Champion of Life, actually, you guys might have seen this. Tom Brady on late night TV last night. Let's roll. Is it Stephen Colbert?
Stephen Colbert. Yep.
The beer chugging contest. Check this out.
Damn.
By the way, look at this. This is not beer. Watch him switch the glasses. He's looking at his producer going, okay, I want the grape juice or whatever it is.
Beer chugger?
Yeah.
I don't even think you're allowed to drink beer on TV, are you?
Yeah, listen, you can tell Tom's is beer, though. And I think Steven's is like apple juice or something. Is it apple juice? Michael, do you know?
I don't know if
there's no foam. There's none of that. But watch Tom Brady on this beer.
Okay, how do we start this? Okay, so we just click and go. All right. All right, okay.
Can we spill?
This is so impressive.
We can spill.
Ready?
Look at that.
Look how much foam is in Tom's glass compared to Steven's glass. Look at this fake beer. Somebody call this guy out for this fake beer. Oh my goodness gracious. That is but that's how you get to be on Champion of Life right there. Is Tom Brady taking the beer down. Like the guy doesn't have enough rings and he gets to chug.
He's got the rings. He's got Giselle Bundchen, and now we know he can chug beer down like that. I mean, life is just not fair.
Yeah, he can chug beer with the best of them for sure.
All right, Mike, what do we do now?
Right now, we're going to end the show, and appreciate you guys commenting today and reacting. And Matt Stewart will be back tomorrow in this chair next to me.
Not my call. I would have been here. They didn't want me, okay?
You're hitting the soft spot with our viewers right now. And then we're going to have Hans on Thursday, and B.A. will be back next week. Like you said, he's on
assignment, right?
He's on assignment. He's dealing with some other stuff. So thank you guys for being a part of the show today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.